So I'm going to be using a deck that I have not. Honestly, I love this deck. I've only used it, I feel like, a handful of times, but it can be so self referential and profound. Like, I honestly love it. King of Cups and the Ace of Cups. I guess that was the final card we got last time I used it. Ravenous and Dracon Tarot. So, also, today I'm going to do a thing that I always personally love doing. It hasn't let me down yet. Today, can you hear that? I'm going to open up another booster pack. Now, when I was going to grab the Ravenous and Dracon Tarot, I actually saw my Dungeons and Dragons Tarot deck, but I was like, I feel like that'd be a little too on the nose for today. So, yeah. Pisces season, I guess, continues to be as wild as it has been the entirety of this season. I didn't go to work today. So I was like, oh, maybe like since I'll be home, there'll be. I was high key thinking last night. I was like, I don't work tomorrow. What kind of crazy surprise is Pisces season gonna bring me today? And she delivered. Also, I don't know if it's something that I thought would never happen that happened yesterday, but it's been a thing a few times this year since I've been back. I'm pretty sure where I'll say something, I'll be like, wow, I can't believe whatever. Like, to make this right, then this should happen. And then, like, the next day, something will happen. And I'm like, and again, it's like it was so unexpected. I don't want to necessarily get like too specific just in case, but there are some differences, I guess, that we'll say between me and someone that I know. And honestly, like differences that boggle my mind. And that's fine because I know that there are like many different people. It's just like a way of being that I feel like I am so particularly me, or I'm so particularly a certain type of way in so many arenas and aspects of my life that like I can't fathom what it would be like to I don't, it doesn't compute, right? But then something happened and I'm like, wow. I was like, what? That's why I'm like, what is happening? Pisces season is wild. Pisces season started that day and the day before. Crazy. I feel like there hasn't, if there's been a day where I haven't been surprised, it's probably been one, definitely not more than two. And I'm like, wow, okay. All right. Anyway, I feel like I should mention that. I also had, I don't know, I guess there are parts of my experience. Because another thing happened yesterday. It's almost like I don't know if I'm more comfortable. I think so. It's like I'm more comfortable now than I thought I would be. I'm more comfortable where I am than I thought I would be, which has led, especially recently, to some potentially like interesting moments. Hey, Holly, I am having an amazing day, I guess. I hope the same for you. I already forgot what I was saying. Oh, yeah. Especially like after some stuff happened before, I was ready to like, I was like, no, I wasn't even open. And I don't know. Like again, it's just been such an interesting Pisces season. I feel like it kicked off like day one slash day zero slash day -1 of Pisces season, but also like I got back late or early February. I got back on the 6th, so there were like 10 days. But anyway, we'll see. All right, I'm gonna breathe. We're gonna get the me out of the way. I've had my 5 minutes to just be like, WTF is happening. Oh, hold up. Mars is moving into Pisces and Venus and Mercury and the sun is in Pisces. And like, there is like, yeah. But it may be that Mars moving into Pisces because Mars in Pisces is the 10 of cups. Mars is in Pisces is the action that it takes to make a dream reality. Which is interesting because if Venus is the mother and the mother pushes, the mother goes through the labor process. It's almost like Mars in Pisces has a labor process of its own. But anyway, now I'm like, oh. And Saturn is in Pisces too. Saturn and Mars in Pisces feels like, I'll say that it can feel like a polarizer. Saturn and Mars in Pisces, I could see being extreme because it's like it has to comply by the rules of Saturn and it has to be a non self destructive Mars energy. But with those two there together, like to have Saturn, the organizer, in Pisces with Mars, the planet of action, in Pisces, while the sun, illumination, is in Pisces. Now the moon is going to be in Pisces, Venus and Mercury in Pisces. I don't know. I can't remember when they transit into Pisces, but Neptune's also in Pisces. So I guess, yeah, I shouldn't be surprised. And they both conjuncted, our Venus and Mars both conjuncted Pluto before they conjuncted each other a few degrees away from Pluto. Wow. It's been wild nonetheless, though. I'm like, okay. Anyway. Okay, all right. What are we doing today? I don't know. We're just going to pull. I already opened up the pack. I have the cards face down. There's something on like the back. I don't want to see it yet. I have the cards face down. I'm gonna pull. Oh yeah, but Saturn always does that. So I will say though, what's interesting is Mars was in Pisces in 2020. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure it was 2020 when Mars was in Pisces, and that's what initiated my like North Node in Sagittarius. And since then, like the conversation around Mars and Pisces, at least where I've seen it already, the conversation has shifted. And I'm not seeing Mars and Pisces as like, oh, like Pisces is full of illusions and it's delusional. So anything that Mars does right now is going to amount to nothing. I was like, okay, all right. And maybe like to, because I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it here lately where it's like, I'm feeling a tonal shift / I'm ready for a tonal shift / I feel like the reason why I've really started, like I'm not the type of person that feel like if I'm the type of person where if I see something or if I hear something being said, I don't feel the need to like jump in and say the same thing. You know what I mean? Or like if there's something that I believe like deserves attention, or if there is something that I think should be called out or highlighted or considered to some degree, if I see or hear somebody else say it, I'm like, okay, like I don't feel the need to go out and say it. But it's because there were so many things that I wasn't seeing or hearing where I was like, okay, like I need to. My North Node in Sagittarius was like, Chiron and Leo be darned. We're speaking. I was like, okay. Excuse me. But also, I think I mentioned it in my Vedic chart. I'm in the, what, K2? Antardasha of my Rahu Mahadasha. So like this period, this however long period of my life is like ruled by the North Node. And the subsection of that I'm in right now is ruled by my South Node. And I was like, when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I looked up some videos and they were like, oh, it can be such like a difficult point. And I was like, because to me it wasn't feeling hard, but also like I went through my Saturn return. I've been doing my work. And so I guess it's presenting interesting things. But anyway, it's fine. Y'all don't even get to see Saturn no more. Tragic. It's still there, I can assure you. So anyway, all right. I'm actually going to shuffle this first. Give this a clean slate. Cutting to the Eight of Swords. I love that this Eight of Swords is like a white raven. Because it's like white raven doesn't need eyes to see. Ooh. Now it's the Devil and the Eight of Swords. Some big bird. They're both chained to this pentagram. And there's a clock on its head with the crescent moon. That's a wet moon from the Farmer's Almanac. And then again, with the Eight of Swords, we have this one over here that doesn't need eyes to see. That's an interesting dynamic. Maybe I should look that one up. What tree? Oh, that tree? That tree is going to be up. That tree is probably going to be up until I find. Now, what's interesting is I was thinking about taking the big tree down, but I haven't even thought about this tree. That tree, like, I haven't even fixed that tree yet. That tree may be a permanent fixture. Well, unless until I find something else to put there. Then I might pack it up. But for the foreseeable future, there are no plans to take down that tree. Two of Cups. Bottom of the deck is the Ten of Swords. This Ten of Swords. So there was the clock on the Devil card. On this Ten of Swords, there's wait, is that the same as the Devil? It may not be. It's just the red that's making me think because there were red outlines around Ravenous and Dracon. But it's like with the timer, with the clock, with the stopwatch here, with the white rabbit, I'm going to be late. It's like there's a certain amount of time that something can't be spoken or something like that. I almost wonder if it's because the heart is on the other side. It's almost an energy of like, we'll tell them when they're older. It's an energy of like something that isn't spoken because of consideration for someone else. And it feels like it's in consideration of like their mental, emotional, intellectual capacity. Like, why say something when nothing can be done about it? Especially like if someone is prone to like stressing out or worrying, overthinking, spiraling. So it's like, like why even bring it up? Interesting. The Two of Cups and the Two of Pentacles are the cards that came out. This Two of Pentacles reminds me of the Nocturne And I'm pretty sure that card came out recently because I remember mentioning the North Node world and the South Node world, and then the Wheel of Life came out, and I was like, see, there's a North Node one. But it's only in the Vitruvian edition because in the Revelations edition, it's the tension. But it's like this dragon hasn't bitten its own tail, but the tail is in the shape of a heart. And then we have the Two of Cups here, the sun and the moon. This Two of Cups could be a new moon card or an eclipse card because like the sun and the moon in the same sign, the sun and the moon meeting. It's interesting that this dragon is a different dragon and this raven is a different raven though. Anyway, and then we have the chariot at the cut. And again, we have this element of time. I promise not every card in this deck has like a stopwatch or time on it. Because if it did, I feel like I would remember that. I feel like I would have noticed it, but also I could have missed it. This is interesting. See, but this, something about these are almost giving me eyes, which makes me think of that devil card. It's about that time in a minute. I'm gonna need a sentimental. I don't know the rights. I ain't Lizzo or a Lizzo songwriter. If she didn't write the song herself, I don't know. All right. I have two more. No cards means that we can start. No cards. Love it. I'm not even going to look at the bottom. So, all of that maybe potentially being a precursor to what we're going to see today. Excuse me. Let's get in there. The first card we have is Sunder. I feel like this is an art style that is different. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the cards don't look like this. I still have all these here. Yeah, so you see how all these look? Like even the text, they're all the same. But, excuse me, in this Sunder card is different. And then it's like who it's illustrated by at the bottom, too. Oh, snap. Sunder, return all lands to owners' hands. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So I showed y'all, I promise the cards are sitting here face down. So in the flavor text, I'll show you the first line of the flavor text. Do you see that? It'll focus. Come on, please. Focus. Focus. It's focusing. It's focusing. I'm going to hold it up here until it focuses. The flow of time was disrupted. The flow of time was disrupted. And then we saw the clock above the head on that devil. And we also saw the clock on the Tenosaurus that was holding the beak. And then we saw the clock on the chariot. The flow of time was disrupted. Like a flooding river, it rose from its banks. Talaria was drowned in an instant that stretched toward infinity. And then there's the drowning again. from when I used the mythology book. Like everything mentioned drowning in some capacity. Returning all land to owners' hands, that's wild. Is this low key giving me, and because of this symbol right here, y'all remember how like that full moon Virgo, it was like sun in Pisces, sun in Virgo, and then those two gears kind of look like two suns, which is giving me cards in the SKT. Um, the initiate, I believe, has the two Ogdode wheels, but also in the keeper um, and the SKT revelations, they're the two like almost two things off to the side. It's giving me that energy. And it happens in an instant. This is an instant card. It's like something's happening because we see the epicenter. And I guess this is Talaria with its warped building. Look how quickly it focused this time. What's going on back there? Oh, snap. Oh, wow. I love how there's almost like a continuation to these. So the last time I pulled out one of these and went through the booster package because there was the towers that kept coming up. And I remember I was using the Santa Muerte Lenormand because at the end was another tower. But the reason why I pulled another one was because there was an energy that was like that tower that was in a land where time didn't exist. And so it was like it was impossible to reach that tower because it's almost like as soon as you got so close, either there was an invisible force field or like you would just stop because time doesn't exist there. And then in this sunder, the flow of time was disrupted. But it's almost like this is happening. The epicenter of this is that tower. And when time returns to that tower, or when whatever is separating that tower from the rest of space time, when that barrier is broken, it's like returns all land to owner's hands. Land is mana in this. So these are lands. You need a water land, 2 water lands, and then 3 additional land to cast this spell. So after that, like nobody has any mana. Without any mana, you can't play any creatures, you can't cast any spells, you can't do anything. What the freak is this? I kind of want to just like leave it here because it's so like what it is, you know what I mean? But that's so interesting. But I guess like because when we did this last time, Mazzy, the True Sword Paladin, had emerged on the outside, and then she went through the Underdark. She met Wilson, and she was the Hardy Outlander. It was the Hardy Outlander, Wilson the Grizzly, and then exploring the Underdark. And after all that green, she came to the command tower. When she was at the command tower, she faced the challenge that was suited to her. Right? Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. So I guess you could add the mana without adding land. So any mana gained by the command tower would remain, potentially. Any mana gained by the command tower would potentially remain, Well, it is a land card, so I take it back. Or I wonder if the person could lose the land and keep the mana. I don't know. But it is a land card. But anyway, so it's related to someone's identity. So I almost wonder if like, and then I was like, it was that whole time of like with the taunting kobold and that red, what is it, the fire diamond? Ooh, who was this? Flaming fist officer. Yeah, with the flaming fist officer and the, what was it? The flaming fist. Like it was like, well, every time you take down one taunting kobold, another one comes up. I'm pretty sure this gave Hydra energy, which is interesting because in the mythical creatures oracle yesterday, every mythical creature came out as a medicine to Hydra. But I'm pretty sure this was a Hydra energy because it's like when you kill one or when you take care of one, another one pops up. But I had forgotten, I didn't realize until the end about banishment. And with banishment, when you call it by name, everything is exiled. So there can be no more taunting kobolds. And that was how Mazzy got through the one of the trials of the command tower, I guess, with it, whatever this is. I wonder if this sundering is caused by by Mazzy actually approaching that tower. It's like she went through the Undercity, she went through the Underdark, she faced the trials of the command tower, and she would have had three of them because hers was like basic, fire, and earth, or earth, fire, and light. Because I call basic light sometimes. So I don't know if it's like Mazzy breaches the tower and then like whatever kept that tower separate from the rest of time space is like boom, it shattered. Now I almost wonder if I've been watching, well, I watched Avatar The Last Airbender, and then I was seeing some like theories about Aang, and then who was also frozen in time. LOL. Well, he was frozen and time kept marching. But since he was frozen all that time, he was, when he first emerged, he was from a bygone era, from literally a century ago. Like he was frozen for 100 years. Um, but anyway, there was a theory that like since he had stopped aging, it's like he died early because all of that time caught up to him, basically. Because he was 12 years old for 100 years, and then he emerged from the ice. So I was gonna say, I almost wonder if it's like a whole town where like time just stopped, but now that it's sundering, it's just like everything's like starting again. I don't know. This is interesting. This is already interesting. Second card, we ooh, it's shiny. Oof. Oh gosh. We have Tiamat's Fanatics. Tiamat came out yesterday. No. Tiamat also came out when I was using the Mystical Creatures Oracle. And that was probably the day before yesterday because I looked up the Western Dragon. And I looked up the Western Dragon because of the tower. Oh, it's another tower, lol. Because of the tower that came out in the Runic Tarot. And the tower, it was the tower and the King of Pentacles. Where is this? Here it is. I'm pretty sure it mentioned Tiamat. Which is also interesting because we've seen Bahamut, Acolyte of Bahamut. Yeah. So we had Bahamut, now we have Tiamat. I'm just gonna go to Western Dragon and confirm. Also, Western Dragon was the final card, too. Let's see. Western Dragon. Excuse me. So, the dragon is perhaps the most enduring of all mythical creatures in the Western world. It originated as a sea monster in the Near East, beginning as the Babylonian Tiamat, then becoming the Hebrew Leviathan, and then moving into ancient Greece as the sea serpent Python. It did mention Tiamat. It mentioned Tiamat. Here's Tiamat being mentioned again. Cool. And this one is shiny. It's holographic. See, this is how they're supposed to look. Is that like a even like it's almost like even the art style is from a bygone time, or like even the art on the card is like out of time. I literally just said that. So this is a dragon warrior, Tiamat's fanatics. Myriad. Whenever this creature attacks for each opponent other than defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of this creature that's tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. Exile the tokens at the end of combat. And it has haste, so it can attack as soon as it's summoned. This is like high key giving me The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. When you go to that place that's out of time, and before time returns, you pass many frozen in time enemies. But when time resumes, like now you have to fight them because they're no longer frozen in time. But because this has myriad, like everyone gets attacked basically. And then we have Karlach, Fury of Avernus. This is a legendary tiefling barbarian. This legendary tiefling barbarian can easily handle one of Tiamat's fanatics. Actually, no. They're strong enough to eat through. They would both be destroyed, I'm pretty sure. Because the 4 attack of Tiamat's fanatics is enough to reduce that 4 defense to 0. It's interesting that there's a lot of fire here. Whenever you attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap all attacking creatures. They gain first strike until end of turn. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So you get 2 combat phases. And everyone gets to participate with Karlach, Fury of Avernus. So ideally, I'm assuming, you would want for all of your other creatures to attack, and then you attack with Karlach, because it'll untap all of the creatures that are like attacking, and then they'll get to attack again. Now, what first strike does, I am not sure, so I'll have to look it up. Why not? I can do the. What is this? Magic, the Gathering, first strike. So, first strike. It changes the rules for combat by adding an additional combat damage step. A creature with first strike deals combat damage before creatures without first strike. The ability usually represents a creature's exceptional speed or skill, or possession of long-range weapons such as spears, lances, or bows. The most common creature types to have first strike are knights and soldiers. So I wonder if that means it would survive. If at least one attacking or blocking creature has first strike or double strike, As the combat damage step begins, the only creatures that assign combat damage in that step are those with first strike or double strike. After that step, instead of proceeding to the end of combat step, the phase gets a second combat damage step. The only creatures that assign combat damage in that step are the remaining attackers and blockers that had neither first strike nor double strike. So it would survive. Because, well, Karlach doesn't have first strike. So never mind. Anybody else, though, would. Because then they would get to attack before um, the Tiamat's fanatics could attack back, basically. But they would have to attack before. I think if you attack a creature with first strike, they would still like get the first strike. Interesting. Okay. And it's also interesting that they cost the same to like summon. They're both one fire and four other manas. Next card is another shiny one, but this one is water. We got a legendary human wizard, Gale, the Water Deep Prodigy. Have we seen this guy? No. There was another wizard lady for like that was a different tower, I'm pretty sure. I don't oh maybe it no. I don't think it was the same one where the tower first came up. Because there was the assault on some like water deep prison or something like that. Some like middle of the water jail, and there was a warden and a wizard and a dragon that the warden had convinced. Like the warden convinced Dragon Dude that she somehow was related to the source of his power and she had nothing to do with it. His was his by birthright. And then there was a dragon person from outside that had like heard tellings of this dragon dude. And they're like, oh my gosh, like that's the missing prince, whatever. Anyway. So Gale, Waterdeep Prodigy. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may cast up to one target card of the other type from your graveyard. If a spell cast from your graveyard this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Now, this one is not going to survive the water. This one isn't going to survive Tiamat's Fanatic, and it's not going to do much. It's not going to take a Fanatic out either, unless it uses a sorcery or a spell, a sorcery or instant spell. Oh my gosh, hold up though. Look at this. You see that? You see how like there's all that thunder and lightning around them, all that lightning around them, and then we have the thing going on at the epicenter here. And this is an instant spell right here. This has given me some like weird time loop thing now. But it's almost like because every time time is disrupted and then returned, there's like some kind of flooding or there's some kind of effect. It's almost like every time it happens, though, it gets worse. Because I would view it as like if somehow like Tiamat's fanatics get past Karlach, and like again, like he's not strong enough to take out a fanatic on his own. So even if he were to have first strike, it would do literally nothing. If the first strike would not help him. So I wonder if it's almost like if anything were to get past him, his only resort or his best bet would be to cause this sundering. So there are a few shows or there are a few things that I've seen that have like time loops in them where it's like I know on one show when the moon was destroyed, it was there would be a time loop and there was a fight. Like somebody was trying to move the moon for some reason, and then somebody else was there, and they ended up destroying the moon. But every time the moon gets destroyed, they like go back to the beginning of that day. Now there were two characters who were immune to the time loop because there were like time bees or something. There were time bees. And then this is funny because so when I was coming live, I saw that someone had a International Women's Day reading, or like the title said International Women's Day, but I read it as like Interdimensional Women's Day, and I was like, whatever that is. Um, but they were like, I think they ate the honey of like time bees or something. And so it didn't make them immune to the time loop, but it did give them a recollection. So every time it went back, they like knew. Oh, the rest of the characters had no clue. And so, of course, you know, with any time loop, there's the amount of time that you have to spend convincing everyone else that like you're in a time loop or that they're in a time loop. And so like that's when like you start to say what the other person is saying as they're saying it. And then before they say it, or like you're like, oh yeah, that's gonna happen, and then it happens to like prove. No, what actually happened. Eve, how are you? I'm doing all right. I'm doing pretty well. Pisces season is continuing the Pisces season, so I guess I'm here. I was wondering how it was gonna surprise me today. Um, and I'm like using the Dungeons and Dragons. It's a weird one today. We'll see if we can ground it later. Um, but anyway, I feel like whale has been coming up, and whale is also a water creature. So there is a guy. I forget the significance of this guy or where they were going, but they ended up finding whales, and whales in the show are like ancient guardians. Um, I'm trying to think of like if this is the thing that threw it. Yeah. So when I've talked about how the internal circumstance versus the external circumstance, like this is the thing that threw everything off whack. And then after the external circumstances were changed, they didn't know how magic worked anymore. Because they're like, you know, well, back when the circumstances were what they used to be, this would have been enough to whatever. And it's like magic became like in that show, magic is always dangerous. But it became even more dangerous because it was like more unpredictable. But anyway, so they go to the whales and they're like, whales, you have to help us. Like, you got to do something. We're stuck in this time loop and it keeps happening. And the whales are like, that's not our problem. We don't have to do anything. We have our own job to do. And one of the characters gets real sassy with the whales, and the whales remove her protection. They like, I can't remember if they like blew water on her or something, but they removed her protection. And so now there's only one character who retains um, the knowings of what's happening in these time loops in the time loop. And I feel like that character had given up. He was like, you know what? This is our life now. Everything that we've tried, because this was like several attempts. And this is like a mini time loop inside of this show where there's like 42 time loops because there's some other big bad. And every time the big bad wins, I guess time restarts to much longer than a day. um, but anyway, so then the guy is like, okay, like I have to figure this out. And so he ends up, if I'm remembering correctly, I think he ends up, what does he end up doing? There's something that he does to end up like breaking the loop. But what happens is like the moon is moved. So instead of the moon being destroyed, it's just like moved slightly. Again, I could be recalling this way incorrectly. But instead of the moon being destroyed, it's moved slightly. Now, the thing that triggered the time loop wasn't the moon being destroyed, it's actually what the whales were guarding. So at the bottom of the ocean, the whales are basically etching and re-etching a magical sigil to keep something trapped. But when the moon is destroyed, there are pieces of the moon that fall to the earth and disrupt the seal. The seal is broken, the thing is released, and then the magic of the whales trigger a 24-hour time loop to keep that thing from like wreaking havoc across the planet. And that's why the whales were like, whatever's going on up there. See, but I guess I don't know if that also reveals, because as the viewer, you get to see everything. So now it's like it almost reveals a short-sightedness of the whales, because it's the very thing that they're being approached about that causes the seal to break. And so if they would help them, then it would be like two birds with one stone. It would be like nipping it in the bud, because the destruction of the moon is what causes the seal to break in the first place. But anyway, it's giving me that like time loop energy. And because like it's the water deep prodigy. It's kind of weak for a prodigy, just saying. His prodigy isn't magic, it's not even attacking, apparently. But you get two for the price of one. One in your hand. So you get to use either one spell that you haven't used and one sorcery that you did, or one sorcery that you haven't used and one spell that you did. Now, if you can only use something a maximum of two times. Because after you use it, it goes to the graveyard. From the graveyard, you can use it, but then you exile it. Now, unless you have something that can return something that's been exiled. And that was that the one before this one? Or no, it was this one. Excuse me. I'm pretty sure it was the beginning of this one where like everything was about being exiled. Yeah, because Displacer, Kitten, exiled. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to one target non-land permanent. And then it was the Mirror of Life tapping. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it was cast, exile it, then return all other permanent cards exiled. I don't know what we're doing today. So I think a spell, that's an interesting question. My magic is extremely rusty. Extremely rusty, as if I ever had a foundation. My knowledge of magic is extremely incomplete. I think the difference is an instant is a spell that can be cast regardless of if it's your turn or someone else's turn. But a sorcery can only be cast on your turn. I think that's the difference. So like if your turn is over and now it's your opponent's turn, you can't cast any sorceries because like your sorcerer has already performed their action. But if you have an instant, then like it doesn't matter where in the combat, turn, whatever, you can cast it because it's instantaneous. So there are less restrictions on what is instant. And you have to be in control for sorcery. Now, what's interesting is that in the beginning yesterday, to enter the Underdark and to explore the Underdark and to enter the Undercity, you had to have initiative. But these cards also gave you initiative, right? Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and or gate cards. Put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. You take the initiative to explore the Underdark. And then going into the Undercity, you took initiative too. Now, initiative and turns, some things, if you have the initiative, it plays out different than if you don't have the initiative. That's all I know. Because I think there was one booster pack that was all about initiative. Like when you have the initiative, it takes this face. If you don't have the initiative, it takes the other face. More often than not, I think it was like more effective if you had the initiative, but maybe if you didn't, it was also pretty just like different. I think that's the difference. Instants are spells on your turn. Sorceries are spells on your turn. Instants you can cast whenever. So you like in the beginning of this, I was pulling the Ravenous and Dracon, and on every card almost there was a clock, and on the Devil card there was like this clock, and then it was the Ten of Swords. I'll show you because I can do that without having to look at cards because I don't want to. So I'll show you. The Devil came out first with some card at the cut. I don't remember. And like there was this clock on top, right? And I was like, what? That's weird. And then I saw the Ten of Swords. And on the Ten of Swords, it was, we'll tell you when you get older. Like the beak of the raven was shut closed, but there was like this clock here. And because the heart was there, it was like something that like maybe someone is too young, they wouldn't understand it. You wait until they get older. You wait until they develop the capacity to process the information and not be overwhelmed by it. And then we saw the Chariot. Oh, number 7. Where am I going? Then we saw the Chariot, and there's like the little clock right there. So the first card that came out, or the first card at the bottom, at the top of the deck, face down, was the Sundering. And I look at the art and I look at the text and I'm like, whoa, was this like alternate art? Because the cards don't look like that. Like, again, like this is what the cards look like typically. Like the font is the same and everything. Some of them may be like holographic, but the font is the same. This was Sundering. And the first line in the flavor text, the flow of time was disrupted. And I was like, oh my gosh. Come on, it almost focused. My fidgety hand. The flow of time was disrupted. I was like, wow. And I think this Waterdeep Prodigy is the disruptor. Now, the Waterdeep Prodigy could be the whales. And Tiamat could be what was sealed by the whales. Because I'm assuming it's the fanatics of Tiamat that are like trying to do something. Like the fanatics of Tiamat would be the ones trying to break a seal. And then this Waterdeep Prodigy would be like maintaining it. And then when I looked up the Western Dragon from the mythical creatures, it mentioned Tiamat. So I was like, oh my gosh. I'm 4 cards into this booster pack. I spent some time with the Ravens and Dracon. Okay. Also, we had the Stranger Things thing on one of those. There was like sunken treasure, or there was an old city and an old horror that was released. These have been interesting. Next card, we have Sword Coast Sailor, which is a legendary enchantment. This is a background. So, commander creatures you own have, whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life than that player, this creature can't be blocked this turn. You were born at sea, and your legs are steadiest when the waves are rowdiest. So, if Gale the Waterdeep Prodigy has this Sword Coast Sailor background. I mean, it only has one attack. So unless the opponent has like 1 HP or like 1 vitality point left, they can, it's better than 0. Um, but Gale the Water Prodigy could attack at whatever Tiamat's fanatics are whoever controls Tiamat's fanatics without being guarded if the player has more HP than anybody else. Or if the player has more HP than the opponent. And this is just a background. Now, the background could also apply to Karlach, the Fury of Avernus, and give Karlach this fiery energy, but with a water background. I don't know. I don't know who this sailor is yet. Oh, so also I was like, well, what's causing the sundering? Oh, look, now it's focusing. The flow of time was disrupted. Like a flooding river, it rose from its banks. Talaria was drowned in an instant that stretched toward infinity. I remembered the tower that came out in the other one, the tower that was like outside of time space. And I remember Mazzy approaching the tower last time after she got through the command tower. And so I was like, I wonder if like Mazzy actually reaching that tower shatters that timeless bubble. And then time just like rushes back or whatever. Actually, I wonder if that wasn't the same reading. Where the tower came out. Because now I'm feeling like it could have been. I don't remember. I don't remember if it was the same booster pack or not. Next, we have Scanos Dragonheart. This is a legendary Dragon Ranger. All of our creatures so far are legendary, except for the Tiamat's Fanatics. They're not legendary. Everyone except for Tiamat's Fanatics are legendary. Whenever Scanos Dragonheart attacks, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among other dragons you control and dragon cards in your graveyard. I almost wonder if Scanos is our legendary Sword Coast Sailor. Maybe not. But the only other dragon card is Tiamat's Fanatics. I don't always see dragons with embellished tails. But there they are today. They have hearts in the Ravenous and Dracon. There was a triangle on the Western Dragon, and this one has what could be a scorpion stinger. But it's also like this blue. The greatest power among other dragons. I almost wonder if they don't fight each other. Because one is of earth and one is of fire, and typically fire scorches earth. And earth is harmonious to water. But right now we don't have, I feel like they're not on the same side. Could be wrong. So right now it would get nothing. But it would be strong enough to take out a dragon fanatic. Now, if Scanos has first strike from Karlach, then it can take out a dragon fanatic and survive. If it doesn't have first strike, it's gonna be mutual. They're gonna take each other out. But what's interesting is that, like, I don't know, we have this tiefling and this dragon, and I feel like tieflings are like related. I feel like tieflings are supposed to be maybe descendants of dragons, but maybe not. Let's see, D&D tiefling. Ba-ba-ba-ba. No thanks. See, that's what they look like. She looked like she could be a descendant of a dragon, right? Oof. Tieflings are derived from human bloodlines, and in the broadest possible sense, they still look human. However, their infernal heritage has left a clear imprint on their appearance. So they're infernals. They're not from dragons. Gotcha. Well, here I thought maybe they was. They ain't. I mean, it's talking about Avernus. What, the road to Avernus is paved with good intentions? Anyway, there's some collaboration here, even though Karlach isn't a dragon. Excuse me, Skanos can benefit from Karlach, but Karlach doesn't benefit. Well, Skanos always benefits. Skanos doesn't empower other dragons. Skanos gains power from the strongest dragon, whether you control it or it's in your graveyard. This is weird. Because I don't know in Magic how possible it is, but it's almost like if you can get, even if it's not a dragon that you originally controlled, if you can get it into your graveyard somehow, then Skanos can benefit from its power. Now, if all three of these legendary creatures are working together, then the Waterdeep Prodigy might know a spell to dominate one of these dragon warriors. We also have a barbarian, a wizard, and a ranger, which are like the three basic classes if you don't have like a cleric or a healer. See, but I was just referencing, so the thing in there was the in the booster pack where there was the one who there was like an old city and it went looking for treasure, but it unleashed an ancient evil. I think that ancient evil had the power to like dominate people's like minds or wills or something. Maybe not, but I feel like it might have. And now it's like it's interesting that like, well, if Gale knows a spell, and it could be a dragon that you control, so you don't even have to put it in the graveyard. If Gale knows a spell to even temporarily, now if it's an instant, it might be even better because as like if this were playing out, it's almost like, well, I guess either way doesn't really matter. But you could prevent an attack potentially if it's an instant spell. Now, what's also interesting is we do have three different characters here, right? The myriad of the Tiamat's fanatics allows it to attack like everyone else at the same time. So Gale is like almost still in danger. So Gale would have to see, but then that would work. Karlach might still be in a little bit of trouble because the fanatics aren't as strong as Karlach is tough. So they would reduce his toughness. They would reduce his toughness to 0. Now, Skanos would be powered up and would survive. So Gale could protect itself, by dominating the mind of whichever fanatic attacked it. Because as soon as the control shifts, then Scanos gets this power boost. And now Gale has like survived an attack. I feel like for some reason, but maybe that's also the thing with a lot of magics. It's almost like there's a lot of like last resort type stuff. And like wizards aren't. I guess it's interesting that this prodigy is tougher than it is strong. Because when I think wizard, I think glass cannon. Like someone or a class that's able to put out a lot of damage, but they don't have a lot of vitality, right? They spend most of their days in books in towers, not exercising, training their bodies, or doing whatever. So their bodies can be frail, but their magic is mighty. There's this like Mashal. He's actually a lot tougher than he is offensive. Now we have Lulu, the loyal Hollyphant. I feel like we've seen Lulu before. Lulu is an elephant angel. It has flying. Now, flying Lulu can attack one of these. Flying can only be defended by flying. Like if you don't fly or if you don't have the range, there's nothing you can do. And it sucks. Well, maybe it could defend itself, but like if you attack a player, maybe it can't. I don't remember. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each tapped creature you control, then untap them. Now, Lulu also gets a background. And here we have another legendary creature. Everyone's legendary except Tiamat's Fanatics. I wonder if Tiamat would be the legendary. Hollyphant giving me horrifying energy. But that's the end step. So if you have a creature with an ability, they would get to reuse that ability, but like you're not going to attack again from the end step. But this is interesting because we get a second combat step both through First Strike and through Karlach. If it's the first combat phase, untap all attacking creatures. No, that's a phase. So it's possible. Well, so there's the first combat phase, and then Karlach. All right, enjoy dinner. See you later. So then Karlach comes out. There's another combat phase, and in that second combat phase, it's now broken down into steps because some will move faster than others. So the first strike of some moving faster than others is another disruption to time. Now I'm almost wondering if there aren't like multiple things that build up to, because again there's still that energy of like every time time is stopped or every time there's a loop, there's something that compounds. But because something keeps looping, the impact of that compounding is never felt. Like the impact won't be felt until the loop is broken, and then it's this like flood wave that comes and apparently drowns the city eternally. Next, we have Beckoning Will-O-Wisp, who's a non-legendary creature. Lure the Unwary. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose an opponent. Creatures attacking the last chosen player get +1/+0. Oof. So this one, it's interesting that we get the Beckoning Will-O-Wisp because that's the energy that Eight of Wands was giving me in the good tarot. It was giving me Will-O-Wisp energy, but there was something that gave it a positive connotation. because it was like either the will o wisp can like guide the lost or they can like misguide other people. But something came out that gave it more weight on the guiding the lost. I think it was the because it was the medicines, right? Um, it was the plumed serpent that brought mental clarity, and even the Kirin, because they combated the befuddlement and the overwhelm of the Hydra. I think that's why it had more of a like guiding the lost energy. The flavor text says, "Follow the light at your own risk." I don't know. This almost feels like it's on the side of Tiamat's fanatics to me. And because this feels like it's on the side, this is how it's playing out in my mind. Because it feels like it's on the side of Tiamat's fanatics, it feels like the fanatics of Tiamat, like they're good at attacking and they're good at numbers, but they're not necessarily good at like planning and preparation. But the luring, and maybe it's because there is so much, it's easy to try to see the, it's easy to see Gale, the Waterdeep prodigy, as some kind of like linchpin or the foundation of the defense of this tower. Maybe it's because it can use sorceries and spells at the same time. Now, because of Gale, a sorcery is a card that you can, I'm assuming, for the purpose of this video, with my working knowledge right now, a sorcery is a card that you can only play on your turn. But because of Gale's ability, if you play an instant, you can also play a sorcery. So you can use Gale's ability to treat sorceries like instants because you don't have to wait. I guess it also says something um, for Gale's ability to simultaneously cast both an instant and a sorcery, both one that hasn't been cast and one that has been. Like maybe that speaks to the talent. So maybe the that toughness is like a mental fortitude. I haven't seen it in too many like anime, but it's given me like parallel thinking. And there's one show where it's like to cast a spell even without an incantation, it takes mental power. It takes some element of focus and or concentration. And so it's like when it comes to the intricacies of those magics, it's difficult to cast multiple spells at the same time or to cast a really, really, really advanced spell fairly quickly because of like incantation and all of the mental work that goes into whatever. But with parallel thinking, it's like you can have one brain focus on this and another brain focus on that. And so you get like you can do multiple things at once, basically. But anyway, it's seeming like Gale, even though and it may be because Gale is the weakest, and he's apparently this like prodigy. Gale is a prodigy. I almost wonder if like also because Gale's attack is only one instead of being higher, and you would assume, like I would assume that a dual casting sorcerer would be able to like do a lot. You know what I mean? Just from like shows and stuff that I've watched. Because it's like whenever someone has parallel thinking and they're able to cast multiple spells at once, it's a big deal. But I almost wonder if Gale isn't matured because Gale's just a prodigy. So like, yeah, there are things that like Gale can do that's like, oh my gosh. But if Gale is young, Gale's not necessarily doing things that other people aren't doing. It's just that Gale is doing them faster. Or Gale is doing them at an age before it's thought someone has the capacity. Going back to that Ten of Swords, will tell you when you're older. Like this is a very mature Gale. And maybe there's a certain way to read this where it's like maybe someone was seen as very mature by somebody else. And so, where that person would have waited until longer to tell them something, maybe they thought, like, oh, like, yeah, I know that they're just a child, but they're a really mature child. So, like, I'm going to tell them, like, what's really happening. And maybe, even though the child was mature, it's like it hadn't developed that emotional capacity in the same way of like going through things just kind of like builds your capacity. You know what I mean? And so it still could have been a little more than was for that child to handle. Just because they were mature doesn't mean that, you know, they were. I mean, there are certain things that no one's ever ready for. Um, oof, oof. This is big oof. There's a way to read this that is kind of dark, and I'm not gonna avoid it just because it's dark. But um, this ain't the time. So I hope you maybe that resonates more to like where someone has been and something that happened to someone at some point that they've like come to terms with, healed from, and grown from. Like something that someone isn't actively in, but I guess if someone is still dealing with that, or maybe if someone has the opportunity, I feel like if someone is put in the position, I like that better. If someone is put in the position to maybe tell a harsh, not a harsh truth, but it's just like something that's hard to accept to someone else. And they're like, oh, well, that like, they're mature, they can handle it. It's like if they have to know, yes, will the maturity help potentially, but also like keep their capacity in mind. Maturity helps with a lot of things, but not everything. And sometimes we think that maturity will help, and it's still like a lot for a child. You know what I mean? Like, regardless of how mature or adult like or wise a child is, there are still some things that children should or shouldn't have to experience because, like, they're still children. You know what I mean? Everything that someone needs in that situation. Um, but besides that, it feels like Gail is some kind of linchpin to the, or I wonder if there's almost like a link between Gail and the tower. Like, let's say that Gail is removed from the tower, but someone figures out that something about Gail keeps the time bubble around that tower. Gail somehow keeps that. Maybe that's why Gail is weak too. Maybe there's a part of Gail's psyche or there's a part of Gail's being that is devoted to or that is siphoned away to maintain the impenetrability of that tower. And so either way, Gail is seen as the weakest link. And again, the Tiamat's fanatics are like perfect because it has myriad. They attack everybody. And so it's like it's hard for Karlach or um, Dragonheart. It's hard for Karlach or Scanos to protect Gale if they're also fighting their own fanatic. Now, there's something about the teamwork of these. It's like there are ways to like deal with the fanatics. So it's almost like they come up with the will of the wisp. So they can beckon Gale the wandering prodigy. And look, it's just as strong as Gale the wandering prodigy, but it costs a lot. Well, no, they cost the same mana, just a different element. It's like if you can lure Gale away, and again, they have flying. It's hard for non flying creatures to deal with creatures that fly, right? So it's almost like they could beckon Gale away from this area where Gale has some kind of protection and they can take care of him. And I feel like that's the part where it's like Tiamat's fanatics aren't usually, they're not known to be clever or planned, organized. They're not known to be organized enough to incorporate a luring tactic. Usually they try to overwhelm with numbers. Like they use that myriad nature to their advantage. And so it's almost one of those like something bigger is going on, or there's a darker force behind the scenes that is using these. Again, I've seen movies, watched anime, played video games. So now also because they share the same aspect, because they share the same elemental nature, it is making Lulu look a little suspicious. Is Lulu the man on the inside or the person on the inside? Maybe Lulu's like, I can't beat the fanatic, so if you can't beat them, join them. Unfortunately, that's how it works sometimes. If we can't overcome or whatever we're going through, we'll just become something that perpetuates it out into the world. I wish I had like a. We'll use Bixby. If Bixby says tails, Lulu is suspicious. If Bixby says heads, then Lulu is fine. Hey Bixby, flip a coin.
All right, here comes the flip. Looks like it came up heads.
Okay, so Lulu is fine. I'm still keeping an eye out for Lulu. Is Lulu truly fine? What's the truth of Lulu the Hollyphant? Okay. But maybe that's a trick. Maybe it's a trick to sow discord and distrust. You know what I mean? I wish I knew what Tiamat was about, especially in this universe. I guess I could look it up. Because when we saw the acolyte of Bahamut, Bahamut showed that power and kindness can unite under the same banner. Oh, that's part of the elemental nature of Mazzy, though. Oof. Because I was like, maybe Mazzy will show up and Mazzy will shift the balance here somehow. Because Mazzy encountered that acolyte of Bahamut, or Mazzy becomes an acolyte of Bahamut at some point. Because Mazzy is changed by like, you can be powerful and kind. Got to keep an eye out for Lulu. All right, next card. We have another one, the Far Traveler. Commander creatures you own. Oh, this is another background. Commander creatures you own have, at the beginning of your end step, exile up to one target tapped creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. You have traveled to many places, over mountains and across seas, but a new journey always calls. Now, this almost feels like a foil to Scanos, Dragonheart. And it feels like a foil to Scanos, Dragonheart because it was that like, well, maybe Gale knows a spell to at least temporarily gain control of a dragon to make Scanos more powerful. Scanos also draws power from dragon cards in the graveyard. But this far traveler background exiles that card. It exiles the card and then it returns it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Oh, this would be Lulu. It's easy to say this is Lulu because they have the same, like, I think Lulu could be, yeah, choose a background. So, like, Lulu is the far traveler. Happy Interdimensional Women's Day. Did I mention that before, Lulu? I can't remember where I mentioned that. Maybe with the time. I mentioned it because of that show. They ate it was like I don't think it was a honey that made you loopy from the time bees or something like that. And that was like part of their character, like to like do drugs, basically. To drink and do drugs and know the gossip. So like, oh, I found this like time bee honey, like let's have a good time. Woo, woo. And then they ended up in a time loop, just like unintentionally, I guess. And like Lulu is given far traveler vibes with all this flying. So at the beginning of the turn, at the beginning of the end step, that's both of these. At the beginning of the end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each tapped creature you control, then untap them. And then with this one, you can exile up to one tapped creature you control. And then you can return it to the battlefield under your control if it is under your control. So I'm glad I asked if Lulu was suspicious. Oh my gosh. Of course. I hope everything goes well. So if you exile a creature, that counts. I'm pretty sure that counts as the creature leaving the battlefield. So you can power up every other creature you control, and then you can return it to the battlefield. I'm glad that we clarified that Lulu isn't sketchy because I'm putting this background with Lulu. This is Lulu's background. It synergizes too well with Lulu's other aspect. So if Gale is tapped, Gale doesn't become strong enough to. Okay, well, never mind. Gale is still kind of dunzo a little bit. Because Gale would have 4 toughness, but the Tiamat fanatics have 4. So it would still reduce Gale's vitality to 0. But if Karlach is tapped, Karlach would now survive because it would have 6 and 5. So where does this will-o-wisp come from? Let's see. We got more cards. Next card is, I guess we are all on the light. Everything is like light, 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 basic, basic, basic. Here's a sorcery. Slaughter the strong. Oof. Oh, goodness. Each player chooses any number of creatures they control with total power 4 or less, then sacrifices all other creatures they control. It was a big day for the gravediggers at Cliffside Cemetery. Each player chooses any number of creatures they control with total power 4 or less. Everything. Now, this sorcery is a foil to the Far Traveler because before the +1/+1 of Lulu, the loyal Hierophant, the only creature that would be sacrificed is Karlach, because Karlach has 5. Karlach would be the strong that's slaughtered by this Slaughter the Strong. It has more than 4 power. But if they're tapped, if Scanos gets that +1/+1, it'll be at 5 power. Never mind if there's even a dragon with 1 power, because then it would get +1/+1. If Scanos gets any more powerful, it will be slaughtered. Now, Gale is still powerless enough to survive, because then it would be at like 2 and 4. And then this Beckoning Wisp would still survive because it would be at 2 and 4. Lulu would be at 4 and 3. But I don't know if Lulu can power itself up. I don't know the rules. Potentially. If Lulu powers itself up, then it'll survive. But that'll get 2 of these out of the way. And then Lulu could be taken out by one of the fanatics. So everything that could survive a fanatic attack would be taken out by Slaughter the Strong. Oof. Who is our, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's Gale, the Sword Coast sailor. You were born at sea and your legs are steadiest when the waves are rowdiest. That's just like thrives under pressure type energy. Next, we have the Jade Orb of Dragonkind, which is an artifact. What's interesting is we don't have any land yet. No, I still have plenty of, there's always like a basic land card. So there's at least one that we haven't gotten to. But I feel like in a lot of these, I've had multiple lands. So this Sunder, return all lands to owner's hands. There's no land to return yet, besides the command tower, I guess. Add 1 earth mana. When you spend this mana to cast the dragon creature spell, it enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it and gains hexproof until your next turn. It can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. There's a dragon in this. Or maybe the Jade just looks like there's a dragon on it. Now, what's interesting is that green Jade with the dragon. Again, we had all this, like, look at that. And explore the Underdark and that green Jade. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that's where we started to see the green with the Alkalite, the shiny Alkalite of Bahamut. Ooh. Is this no, that's not a spell. It's an artifact. Oh, when you spin, so if you spend that 1 earth mana, to cast a dragon creature spell, it enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it and gains hexproof. So it can't be targeted by spells or abilities. Slaughter the Strong is a spell. Oh. So here's our legendary Dragon Ranger. I don't know if this artifact is a foil to the foil of Slaughter the Strong. It's almost like with this jade orb of dragon kind. And again, Scandos gets more power based on the power of the greatest dragon, or the greatest power of the dragon that is either controlled or in the graveyard of the player. So here's a dragon heritage. If it's an inherited gift, I guess, an inherited artifact that would protect Scandos from being slaughtered by Slaughter of the Strong. Slaughter the Strong, sorry. Scandos survives. Karlach returns to Avernus. I don't know. Now we have another orb, navigation orb, another artifact. So for 2 mana, you can sacrifice navigation orb. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and or gate cards. Reveal those cards, put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle. Navigation orb, travel the world without ever leaving the comfort of home. I guess it's interesting that this comes out here now because I'm like, there's no land card. There's no land to be sundered yet. But with this navigation orb, you can acquire 2 basic lands, one that you put onto the battlefield tapped and another that you put into your hand. Now, what's interesting about the navigation orb is, no, it's in your library. What happens to these? So all the land gets returned to the hand. I'm pretty sure you can only play 1 land per turn. So you still have land, you just have to like put it back onto the battlefield. That almost plays into the circumstances. When the moon was shifted, it changed external circumstances and it messed up magic. Magic became a lot more unpredictable. And that's this like land is mana, so you need land to do anything in this game. And it all returns to everyone's hands during the sundering. So it's like you gotta acquire the resources to cast or to do things that you were just able to do before the sundering. Now, this navigation orb allows you to find lands that you've not yet explored, but it's interesting because we also have this far traveler. You have traveled to many places over mountains and across the sea, but a new journey always calls. But then with the navigation orb, travel the world without ever leaving the comfort of home. Now, they're not necessarily exactly the same, but something about the architecture around this navigation orb is making me think of that Sunder. Maybe it's like the blue roofs and the white buildings. This one costs 3 mana, kind of like the last one. Now we have another artifact. So there's no land, but a bunch of artifacts. The Wayfarer's Bauble. So you can sacrifice, or for 2 mana, you can sacrifice Wayfarer's Bauble, search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. So the Wayfarer's Bauble is it costs a third of the mana. It's only 1 mana, but it costs just as much to activate. They both cost 2. But with the 1 plus this 2, that's the 3 that's required just to put the navigation orb, like to activate the navigation orb. but you get 1 mana. You get 1 mana or 1 basic land that you don't have to reveal. Now, when you put it onto the battlefield, it's revealed. So, it is revealed. Druids hold certain plants to be sacred and use their leaves and wood as a spellcasting focus. Do we have any druids here? We have this ranger. Rangers can be druids, right? Or I guess druid is its own class. Because, like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about you, girl. I've been thinking about you. I've been thinking about my old coworker. I was literally just talking about her yesterday. She's another one of my Pisces coworkers. I have 2 Pisces coworkers now. And at my last job, it was 2 Pisces and an Aquarius, who was close to Pisces season, but still an Aquarius. And she just texted me. Anyway. Wow. Okay. Okay, anyway, sorry. So, druids herd certain plants to be sacred and use their leaves and wood as a spellcasting focus. So this Wayfarer's Bauble is an assortment of sacred plants created by druids. Now, I almost wonder. So, because we still have the Beckoning Will-o-Wisp. Lure the unwary. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose an opponent. Creatures attacking the last chosen player get +1/+0. I almost wonder story-wise, and it is almost this diagonal. It's Gale and then the Beckoning Will-o-Wisp and then this until another card comes out and I shift it. But then this Navigation Orb. So this Navigation Orb feels like a foil to the Beckoning Will-o-Wisp. It's like that Navigation Orb will give Gale some kind of, or whoever is lured by the Will-o-Wisp, it'll give them an ability to like find their way home, essentially. So the Jade Orb Dragonkind is the foil to, it's the foil for Scanos Dragonheart to slaughter the strong. The Navigation Orb is the foil to this Beckoning Will-o-Wisp for. And this Wayfarer's Bauble is a way to reclaim, or to claim, not reclaim, but to claim land. Don't have the foil yet. So we have Lightning Bolt, which is another instant spell. So Lightning Bolt deals 3 damage to any target, and it's an instant. Oh, snap. Finally. Finally. But, and the other one is a sorcery, but that's used against these, it feels like. Gale. Oh. LOL. Look at all the lightning around Gale. With this lightning bolt, Gale would be strong enough to defeat one of the Cobalt, one of these Tiamat's fanatics. But Gale, I mean, they have like Gale's still not tough enough. So at least Gale won't be like, now it becomes mutual destruction and not just Gale, whatever. Because the lightning bolt will deal 3 damage and then Gale can deal. It has one. Now, if there's another spell that deals damage, because again, Gale can basically dual cast one instant and one sorcery. If there's a sorcery that also deals damage, but Gale doesn't need a sorcery to deal damage because enough damage is dealt to take care of the kobold. Excuse me. Gale would need a sorcery to make it stronger, to make it tougher, to survive a hit from the kobold, basically. So here's another foil. So it seems like all the foils are like coming out at the end. Now we have Safana, the Calimport Cutthroat, which is a legendary human rogue who has menace. At the beginning of your end step, if you have the initiative, create a treasure token. Create 3 of those tokens instead if you've completed a dungeon. Not all. Like now we get this dark swamp, poisonous, whatever. And it's like, girl, where'd you come from? This element ain't here all the time. We got so much like basic or like light. So it's what? Water, water, fire, fire, water, water, earth, light, 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 earth, nothing, nothing, fire, and then this. I don't think that's what Menace does. Let's see what Menace does. Oh, wait. That's Tieflings. Oh. Magic. The Gathering. Menace. So, Menace is so creatures with Menace can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. Oof. So 2 creatures have to block Safana. Safana almost becomes this swing character now. It's like if Safana is on the side of the Tieflings, not the Tieflings, the Fanatics, then it's like it would make it even harder to defend against her. But if Safana is on the side of Gale, it's almost like because it would take 2 creatures, she would be able to defend Gale. She would sacrifice herself because again, she's not strong enough as she is. With the +1/+1 of Lulu, like she would be strong enough to take one down, but not necessarily strong enough to survive one, let alone trying to survive 2 of them. But like with her menacing ability, she'd be able to grab the attention of both her fanatic and the fanatic that goes after Gale. Everyone else can only defend once, unless they're flying. Lulu is flying, so I think flying creatures are still immune. Again, I don't know. We only get 1 land card. The land is an island. We get 1 basic land, and that's it. As you gaze down upon Worm's Crossing, you hear distant cries of alarm, and you notice that all traffic on the bridge has come to a halt. Oops. Look at like because we have this flooding city was drowned in an instant that stretched toward infinity. And then you have this island. This just like, it's almost like all this happened a long time ago. Or it's happening in an isolated space. I don't know what this was or is. We'll see if we like. I found one exit to grounding this along the way. But it's just like, this is Talaria, right? Yeah. This is Talaria, or Talaria already flooded. This is the fight being over. It's just like the aftermath. This is the aftermath. And then we have an art card of Raphael, Fiendish Savior. Oh, I have these. Maybe that's why I don't often pull out a tarot deck. Queen of Pentacles. Before I even start these, but I did today. Let's go for this Raphael character, please. Why is Raphael a fiendish savior? I mean, Raphael is kind of reading a little bit more tiefling than what I would think Raphael would be. Maybe I'll give it two more. One more. The King of Pentacles. Bottom of the deck is the Wheel of Fortune. Look at this Wheel of Fortune and how it's like this black hole that's like sucking everything in. King of Pentacles. We just saw the King of Pentacles with the dragon. I'm gonna read it. I ain't getting nothing off of this queen. I might get nothing. King of Pentacles, King of Pentacles, King of Pentacles. Sometimes I guess we just read fun stories. The King Raven took in his realm. The King Raven took in his realm. Oh, look. See that body of water stretched in between, like this body of water locked by this landmass? It's almost giving island vibes without the bridge. Excuse me. King of Pentacles. He was generous, warm-hearted, and transparent in his actions. He worked hard to create a stable world. His resources enabled an abundant life for exactly what he needed and what he could provide to others in his life. He appreciated the finer things in life and welcomed those who maintained a positive mindset towards success and personal growth. As this card appears, it is a crescendo of the life journey that you have worked hard to create and the sacrifices made along the way. You have established a stable world that, with minimal oversight, continues to produce the life that provides all that you need. And it's not reversed, so we ain't gotta read that part. It's interesting that it mentioned it as a creator of a world. I mean, like when you create your world, it's like you creating your life. You know what I mean? Oh, hold up. Hold up. We only have one land card. So if we would have searched for this land, either the Wanderer's Bauble, we have the Wanderer's Bauble, Wayfarer, sorry, either the Wayfarer's Bauble or the Navigation Orb. The only basic land that we have is, excuse me, this. So if Gale, and it's a water card, or it's a water land, it's an island, and Gale is island person. Did we ever find out who this Sword Coast sailor was? I think the Sword Coast sailor is Gale. See this, it produced like this is a whole. So this is how I'm seeing it go, because now we know what the land is. So the foil to the beckoning will-o-wisp is either the navigation orb or the wayfarer's bauble. It almost like it depends on how much mana Gale has to burn. If he can swing it, navigation orb. Or you get a 50-50 chance. If not, then it's the wayfarer's bauble. And again, the only thing in the library of this is the island. So Gale uses either to find a way after being led astray by the beckoning will-o-wisp and is taken to a time where the battle is over. And that's why it feels like Gale is this Sword Coast sailor. Because, like, you know, where Gale came from, things were a lot more turbulent and tumultuous and testing and tribulatory, if that's a word, tribulational. There were many trials and tribulations. And now in this modern world, like, sure, it's different, but it's not the same. Like, sure, it exists, but it's not the same, right? Like, we're not stressed about fighting saber-toothed tigers. We're, like, stressed about the cost of living and other things. Now, if Gale is or was, because again, it was that energy of like something about a loop, and every time we loop back, the impact grows and grows and grows. Now, because of this navigation orb, all of a sudden, Gale is removed from the situation. Things flood. It's like without Gale to maintain that loop, something happens that just like it floods everything. Now, a way to read that would be like, let's say that there's something that we're going through or experiencing in life, something that causes emotions that come in waves. And the more we go without addressing it, like the bigger the waves get. But like maybe we find a way to cope. So we cope through it when it's hitting us and the waves get bigger, and we cope through it and we cope through it and we cope through it. But when it's almost like if we ever hit that point where like coping fails, now we're hit by everything. It's compounded every time we like coped our way out of it. And coping with it in a way that doesn't relieve or resolve anything because of that building, right? Like if we cope with it and like we resolve it partially, then it would like shrink in time, because every time it comes up, we resolve a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more until it's mostly taken care of. Then maybe it'll come back and we would have had so much of it resolved through those multiple waves that we can just take care of it, or it doesn't even affect us anymore. But to cope in a way, to distract in a way, to not resolve anything in a way, to cause things to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and more and more and more overwhelming. So we have to increase our degree of coping. It's like when something is removed, like all of a sudden it all hits at once. But I almost wonder, hypothetically, what happens to this land without Gale? Because again, Gale was like, at least given the energies of Gale, is that lightning at the center of the sundering. Patrick, what is this? I don't know. So Gale is our Sword Coast sailor. Gale becomes the Sword Coast sailor when Gale is removed from his time. See, but maybe that's the thing about advanced magic. I'm literally watching a show right now about someone who is interdimensionally displaced from their home. And somehow I watched the first like half of the first season in a YouTube recap. So I missed a whole bunch of details. But then I was like, oh, this show seems so good. I'm going to watch it for myself. But I didn't start from the beginning. I started from where I stopped looking at the recap. So I know mostly what's going on, but the details, the fine details I missed. I need to go back and watch it. Anyway, it's someone who's like forcefully removed from their home and teleported, transported to another world. It's an isekai, so I love them. And then there's a question. They actually find a dragon. There's one dragon already, but you find another dragon, and he asks the dragon. He's like, do I have enough? Basically, am I powerful enough to go home? And the dragon was like you have enough mana to make that trip, but you don't have enough to make it accurately. So, yeah, you can open up a doorway home, but you don't know where or when you're going to end up. You know what I mean? So, even if you do go home, it has the potential to not be the home that you're even used to, or that you even recognize, or that you would even know. So, you could go home and end up in a land that's just as foreign as this one. You can go home and essentially, in essence, not go home, basically. And it's this energy, because the navigation orb doesn't drop Gale off where he was when he was. It's like it drops him off where he was, but like in a completely different time. In a time when everything is already resolved and whatever Talaria has been flooded. And again, that's the same background as this navigation orb. So it's like that's where he was trying to go, but it ended up in like a completely different time. Now, because of our Talaria link, I am going to put this with Gale. Gale uses the navigation orb and ends up at a Talaria that is post the flood. Probably even ends up in a time. It's almost like Gale ends up at a time where it's like there is no magic and there's no this. And Talaria didn't, like, it's been so long that Talaria isn't even a thing of myth or legend, because it's older than the myths and older than the legends and older than the most ancient of histories. So now this Wayfarer's Bauble would be used by someone else, I feel like, to find Gale, or to try to find Gale. Or vice versa. If Gale uses the Wayfarer's Bauble, then there's the navigation orb. And it's interesting because, again, like in the navigation orb, it reveals those cards. So maybe that's what builds the confidence. But again, it's almost like right where, wrong when, right place, wrong time. So it showed the place, and you're like, oh, yeah. But there wasn't enough um, mana to get to the right place. Oh, so like oh yeah, I'm glad he works somewhere. If the company is taking care of his, like, seeing to all of the expenses and stuff for sure. Because, there are some companies that won't. They just have you out there. So I wonder if Safana could be the one that ends up going to look for Gale. We don't have any. We had Mazzy. Because, like, if there was a character that was here that gave Safana energy, maybe it's like Safana found a way to extend her life. Um, and then, one day she runs into Gale and she's like, oh my gosh, we didn't know what happened to you. And I thought I was cursed to wander these lands for an eternity. I was cursed with immortality, but here you are, Gale. Now I know why I've been alive this whole time. Like, I would take that route, but I don't see her here before. Unless it's like Lulu, the elephant. This Raphael is still. Maybe Raphael would be like, and there is a lot of water here. King of Pentacles. Wheel of Fortune at the bottom of the deck. Let's get one more. Please. Oh, look, there's that Ten of Swords again. I almost wonder if this isn't something that's lost to time as Gale is hurtling through it. Or if that Ten of Swords was like, again, for Safana, for the one who thinks they're cursed to immortality, punished for some reason. But in reality, it's like, for the ones who know the grander scheme, Safana will be the one to reconnect with Gale, because Gale's going to need some kind of something as he adjusts to this new world. And Safana, with her immortality, she's lived through the changes of the world. So she has an intimate knowing of its history because she was literally there at every single event post Talaria. So Knight of Wands. Excuse me. It's the knights that usually have first strike. There's Two of Cups again. It's almost, and then the Lovers is at the bottom of the deck. The Lovers was at behind the Wheel of Fortune. Who is it? Two of Cups and the Two of Cups and the Two of Pentacles. Not only are they still together, I'm pretty sure I put them back separately, but they also both fell out again. There's a song in my head that, as far as I know, has no words, and I think it's from Final Fantasy. And it's just like the dun 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 dun. It's like boss music, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I feel like this Raphael is still elusive, which is fine. So we have the Jade Orb of Dragonkind with Scanos Dragonheart. Lulu the Holophant feels like this far traveler. The Beckoning Will-O-Wisp. We still haven't revealed, I guess, who was behind Tiamat's. We still haven't revealed the mastermind. Because again, there was that energy of like Tiamat's fanatics, they overwhelm with numbers. They don't lure away or isolate, they just attack everything all at once. We still haven't revealed the mastermind behind here. And this Raphael, like, this ain't the Raphael that you would necessarily think of as Raphael. You know what I mean? It's like we would think Archangel Raphael. That Raphael is reading a little bit more infernal than angelic. But again, it's like beings on a level from a time that is so far removed from ours. Now, Slaughter the Strong is on the side of this, of Tiamat's fanatic. So I'll put this down here. The lightning bolt feels like it's a spell of Gale. Safana is like floating out here. Safana, we're putting with the Wayfarer's bauble. I don't know who she was in the time of Talaria, but it feels like she's from the time when Talaria was a thing and she resurfaces. Again, it plays on her like Gale was a linchpin, but Safana is this like energy that could go either way. Honestly, Safana could be an energy, like especially if Safana's feeling cursed. If Safana is feeling like her immortality is a punishment, she was maybe on the side of the fanatics. So maybe she changed sides, you know. All right. Have a good night, Holly. I hope you hear good news. Good news soon. The Sundering is Talaria. So it just leaves Karlach. Because Karlach is a tiefling, it's almost like Karlach is our only link to Raphael. Not saying that all tieflings are shady, but same thing if Bixby says tails, Karlach was actually the shady one. If Bixby says heads, then Karlach is fine. Hey Bixby, flip a coin.
All right, here comes the flip. Looks like it came up heads.
Okay, it's heads. Karlach is fine. Who is Raphael? Is Raphael the one behind this? Okay, now I have to look up. I got to go back to the D&D wiki, and I have to look up Tiamat to see what Tiamat's role is in D&D. Maybe. Oof. Tyranny of the Dragons. An epic draconic adventure for levels 1 to 15. The forces of Tiamat, queen of evil dragons, bring war to the Forgotten Realms, led by the sinister cult of the dragon. An army of dragons and foul villains wage a merciless campaign to unleash their draconic god upon the world. Opposing them is a desperate alliance, including the heroic Harpers and treacherous Zentarim. This fragile coalition needs heroes to unite them and find ways to resist the draconic threat. Do you have the courage to stand against the cult of the dragon and the threat of Tiamat's immortal tyranny? Oof. Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. And then we had Karlach, Avenger of Avernus. Fury of Avernus is Karlach. Is that the only one? Is that the only mention of Tiamat? And then we have aspects of Tiamat. So I get a little blurb about Tiamat. Tiamat has discorporation. When Tiamat drops to 0 hit points or dies, her body is destroyed, but her essence travels back to her domain in the Nine Hells, and she is unable to take physical form for a time. Okay. Rise of Tiamat. What is this? So, yeah, that's Queen of Evil Dragons. Here, in the context of this. So, I guess if Tiamat's body was destroyed and her essence was trapped, instead of it going back to the Nine Hells or whatever. And again, there were the whales who guarded the thing that was sealed. When Tiamat comes back, time loop. When they fail, time loop, time loop, time loop. And maybe Gale the Waterdeep Prodigy. Because again, Gale has this linchpin energy. Maybe there's something about Gale that, like, was Gale the whales? I think so. That caused the time loop. How do we ground this one down? Well, if Tiamat is the queen of evil dragons, and if we take the route of something that surges and resurges, something that comes back and we cope it away, Tiamat would be the root cause. Tiamat would be the source. Tiamat would be the thing from which our troubles arise. And it's almost like we can cope through or coast through or hold fast through the waves when they come, but without addressing what lies underneath, it stays as it is. Now, this Two of Cups could be because it mentioned like two different forces coming together, a tentative coalition. That could be this energy. And then Two of Pentacles could be the balance of the world, the delicate balance of the world that's threatened by Tiamat. And it's like maybe when Tiamat bites her tail, then her resurrection is complete and her body has her physical form. She can assume physical form again. Her essence has reconstituted. So then this King of Pentacles would almost be like because it talked about the world that is created, would be some kind of like guardian guide. So this is interesting. Fiendish Savior. Thanks, Raphael. See, I was feeling some kind of connection between Raphael and Safana because Safana has that potential of like maybe she was on the other side the last time. It's almost giving me supernatural. I think it's been a minute. But I think in Supernatural, Michael holds Lucifer in his cage or something like that. So Raphael is almost given like either native to Avernus or another infernal whatever that's like guarding, basically guarding, making sure that Tiamat is like not a thing in the same place. It's like, oh, is Raphael evil? It's like, no. Raphael was just like stationed down there and adapted to its environment. So it looks a little different. Raphael's got a tan because there's no SPF. You know what I mean? So, but if I move Raphael, because Raphael is the king of pentacles and it's given like guardian of the world vibes, that's why Raphael's moving. It still doesn't illuminate the mastermind behind this. No, the only am I gonna go through each one of our heroes to be like, is it this person? Is it this person? Is it this person? Or is it someone that's unrevealed? If Bixby says tails, it's someone that's unrevealed. Let's see. Hey Bixby, flip a coin, please.
All right, here comes the flip. Tails it is.
Tails, finally. It's someone that's unrevealed, someone that's not on the board. So I love that energy because uh it dispels seeds of doubt within a campaign, a group, an organization. It's like, was it you? Was it you? Was it you? Was it you? It's like it's none of you. Calm down. Cool. Now, another way that I can read this is that maybe for a while we got really, again, it's along the same lines, but it's the sundering and the time stuff. Maybe for a while we were really good at finding ways to cope around certain things in life, certain unpleasantries. Or maybe we could band-aid bullet wounds. So it's like measures that don't really necessarily address the root cause, but they're topical solutions that'll like keep us from bleeding out or something like that. But it feels like with the sundering, something is failing because something was removed or something has been moved. Now, if this is us, it's almost like maybe we've grown or healed or developed to the point where our crutches don't work anymore. So, like, imagine you're a child and you're 2 feet tall, however tall children are. I don't, I don't know. And you get like, imagine you get a pair of crutches while you're a child and you go 20 some years without needing those crutches. And then let's say like you sprain an ankle or something and you're like 20 years older. Let's assume you're at least 3 feet taller. Like the crutches that you used when you were 2 feet tall aren't necessarily going to be that helpful when you're 5 feet tall. Like that'll go up to at your waist, maybe. And maybe so, like maybe there's something that we've again like grown out of or healed out of. And it feels like that's this navigation orb energy. Like somehow we ended out way outside of wherever the root cause of that is. And because we're older, because the crutches don't work anymore, because we claim sovereignty with all of the authority bestowed upon us as creations of the divine made in the divine's image, there are certain things that like just don't work. And so now we have to do something. Or maybe it's just time. It's time for something to change. And so it's almost like it continues to push. It's like for someone who's in labor, like there's only so much you can do to like stop yourself from having a baby. There's only so much willpower you can exert. You can only clench. I don't know. You can only clench so hard, but like the baby's like going to keep pushing. You're gonna keep crowning because it's time for that thing to be birthed. And that like I'm not ready. I don't well, like it's like the time for not being ready has passed. This navigation, or how maybe however you were navigating your journey, it put you in a position to face something. And maybe what was a foe before may become an ally. So like let's say for instance there was someone in your life who was like you need to do this or you need to do that and you needed to get it together, but you weren't at a place in life to like really listen to, heed, or want their advice. But now that you're kind of like being forced to do something, it's like someone appears to be helpful because of something that they said or did in a previous time where it wasn't necessarily wanted. Maybe that person is now an ally because like them wanting you to progress aligns with you wanting you to progress. And then again, there are all these allies and there are all these hopeful forces. There is some kind of genius about you in some aspect or in some way. Like you would be Gale, the Waterdeep prodigy. I guess you could be a Scanos Dragonheart or a Lulu Loyal Holophant or a Karlach Fury of Avernus in someone else's story. Like you could be the one that like helps someone else do something, obviously. Not obviously, but like if that more resonates to you and your situation, then obviously that would be like more where you fit into this because that's what resonates for you. If you resonate in that, if you don't resonate nowhere in here because I'm just pulling some Magic the Gathering cards and reading this wild story, trying to make something out of it, or seeing how I can see this, like how I can finding context, I guess, in which this could apply in real life. I'm like, but if it don't apply, don't make it fit. Also, there are no bystanders here. So maybe there is someone that knows about this, but it's not their role or purpose to be involved. You know what I mean? Take it as it resonates. But again, it is interesting that it's like for everyone that tries to help or protect or defend Gale, because of the myriad nature of Tiamat's fanatics, they all get their thing to face. And so Gail may be like, "What? Why isn't anyone helping me? Like, what's going on?" It's because they're all dealing with something too now. And maybe the fiendish nature of this angelic savior is that it's almost like with divine consent, which is funny that this is coming up because I heard this earlier. With divine consent, like these other heroes are given their own things to deal with. And again, there's something about Gale having to force. There's something about Gale having to face something that Gale's been coping against, or whoever. Navigation Orb has seen Gale navigate to a point where it's a natural part of Gale's journey, or where Gale needs to like do it, which is the same thing. Cool. It is also interesting that we see in this Two of Cups, it's almost like they've grown to the point where they're the furthest apart. Because, like, they're closer here and closer here than they are here. But they're still growing in the same direction, or they're still growing together. It's that part of the hero's journey. Excuse me. It's that part of the hero's journey where the hero gets separated from their companions, and the hero must rise to the challenge on their own. And it's one of those, like, the hero isn't alone because the hero has everything that their friends have instilled in them, or everything that all of the experiences that they went through with their companions, excuse me, they can pull on now. They can turn that knowledge and experience into a wisdom to apply now. That one wasn't bad. Cool. I think that's what I'm getting. I think that's the easiest way I can see this sort of grounded down. Now, that would put Tiamat in this interesting position where it's almost like Tiamat just played a villain because the hero needed a villain in their story in order to become all of what they became. Show me Tiamat. Ooh, face down. It came out face down under, like, Island, Gale, Sword Coast Sailor, Navigation Orb, Lightning Bolt, under Gale. On its side, it came out like this, but I guess like that. Tiamat is strength. It's interesting because it's almost like we have this veil. Oh, and they're almost like, because of how they're intertwined almost, it's given this like Two of Cups. But it would have been the Two of Cups right after they came out of, like, being, it would be this one because the dragon is on the right and the raven is on the left. But like when they were here, but now as they continue to grow, they'll like keep going in their separate directions. But it's like there are two teardrops that frame this veil. That frame this veil. It's easier if I look at it too. There are two teardrops that frame the veil. Tiamat is strength. So yeah, it is given that energy of like, or it's confirming that energy of the hero needed a villain in order to come into their own. If everything were always perfect and peaceful, then the hero would never grow because they'd never need a reason to. There's a certain element of challenge that is inevitable with life, but it doesn't mean that life necessarily always has to be difficult. I think there are things that are capable of being challenging, but not necessarily difficult. Or at the very least, it's possible for something to be challenging, but not feel impossible or not feel insurmountable. You know what I mean? Bottom of the deck is the Six of Wands. We are meant to be victorious. We are meant to overcome, not meant to be bound, not meant to stay defeated. The Six of Wands is also, well, lately, it came out in the Spirit Keepers Tarot Revelations, and it talked about the single born fruit of the tree of knowledge. Now, we don't have the lovers here, but in the lovers card, the lovers did come out like earlier, like it's made an appearance. But in the lovers card, we have the dragon and the phoenix. We see both Laveness and Dragon on pretty much all these cards. The Emperor is behind the Six of Wands. Love it. Now, this Three of Swords makes things interesting. But behind that Three of Swords is the Ace of Pentacles. we can see these teardrops drop. We can see the tears drop down to form the pillars that support the Ace of Pentacles. Strength to navigate towards a new world, or strength to, but this mentioned legs. You were born at sea and your legs are steadiest when the waves are rowdiest. But this is the strength to stand in a new world. The strength, like it's developing land legs where your sea legs are so sturdy. Then we have the Emperor under, and then our Temperance under the Emperor, the Devil under Temperance, the Star under the Devil. And then the Nine of Pentacles is behind this star. Where's the Emperor? Emperor, Six of Wands, Three of Swords. Now this is interesting because we saw the Emperor, Three of Swords pair when I came back from India. And I was like, what's the collective energy like? Because I've been gone. Or at least like, what's more of the collective experience in these collective energies? And it was the Hermit in reverse with the Emperor upright and the Three of Swords upright. And it was because there was something that the Emperor wasn't able to or wasn't willing to face. They sought out relationship and community that became more about trauma bonding than actual, or the trauma bonding that the Emperor pursued connection with created conditions that aren't necessarily beneficial to the growth of that Emperor. It's almost like it keeps the Emperor in environments that aren't the healthiest, or at least not the healthiest for growth. But we got the Six of Wands now. So the Six of Wands is at the back of this Emperor while it approaches that Three of Swords. Now, what's interesting is that now the chain has been removed. So this could be something that's revealed, because on the Ten of Swords, we saw the beak that was held tight by time. And then we saw that the chain also connected to the heart. So we may think that like, oh, I don't have the capacity to hear this. I'm not ready. Like I can't. Again, it's I want to say it's a harsh truth, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it's just a truth that disturbs our comfort and the image of the world and the way that we live our lives. But it's like when that comes off, and so now all of a sudden, the thing that we would distract with or the thing that we would cope with, it's not dampening those waves, and we're feeling it. Like it's almost like at that point. But again, for this Emperor with the Six of Wands at their back, they're definitely ready to face this Three of Swords. And then we have all this behind it. Temperance, the Devil, and the Star to bring healing to whatever this devil energy was. And over time, there's been like this outpouring or this pouring into Ravenous. And again, it's given the energy of that's like everything that you acquired, everything that you went through, all of the knowledge and the skills that you acquired in the presence of your companions, you can draw on now that you have to face something alone, but it is something that has to be faced by you, by Gale. Like Gale is no longer this child. Gale, the Waterdeep prodigy, may have been a child when Gale was first discovered. And again, it's like when it comes to prodigy, sometimes, or when it comes to genius, it's not necessarily that they're doing something that hasn't been done yet. They're just doing it at like a way earlier age. Now, with development and with nurturing and practice and development, they grow into the one who's like changing the world. But they still have to have a certain basis or a certain foundation. It's like there's a grasp of that foundation that comes extremely easily or readily or quickly. And then they build off of that. Gail is at a point where they can, like, Gail can build off of it, but there's like maybe Gail has to realize that Gail isn't a child anymore. Just within Gail's self. And it's almost making me think of, like, I was on the treadmill and I think Wonder Woman 1954. I don't know the year. 1945, I don't know. It's some Wonder Woman. I've only seen the first few scenes of the movie because I guess every time I go to the gym, it's the beginning of the movie that's playing on the screen. Excuse me. But I saw the part this time, I got to see farther than I've seen before. I saw the part where Diana was sparring with somebody, and she was like, "You keep doubting yourself." And Diana was like, "I'm not." Again, I'm reading subtitles, so can't even hear them. But she's like, "You're doubting yourself," and Diana's like, "I'm not doubting myself." And then she's like, "You're stronger than you know yourself to be. Like, you're more talented than this. You're stronger than this." And it makes me think of, it's like another show that I've watched where there's this character who's insanely strong. They're so strong. And then they meet someone stronger than them. And it was so important to that character to have someone to look up to almost, that he became his own blockage. Like, he surpassed her strength a long time ago, but he would never allow himself to recognize that or be that, because then it's that fear of, like, well, if I'm the strongest, then life is going to be boring. Life is boring at the top. It's boring and it's lonely. So it's nice to have someone above me, but his strength was demanded. So he wasn't allowed to live with that self-limiting belief anymore. And in the process, only one of them walked out alive. But it's giving me like that kind of energy. When I think that's a song. On my Discover Weekly, there was a song. I was going to send it to somebody too. I think. Maybe not. I think I was. Maybe not. There's a song that came on my Discover Weekly. And in the beginning of the song, it's someone that's talking about, like, I know that I'm so bright, but I have to dim myself in order for you to be comfortable being around me, because I don't want to lose you, or something like that. And it's almost that same energy of, like, Gail not allowing himself, or Gail not allowing themselves, because I guess it could be a gender neutral name, honestly. Gail not allowing themselves to see that they are more mature, that they're stronger, that they're wiser, that they're whatever than they are. Like, they keep themselves infantilized for some reason that they may not even consciously necessarily know. But something about external circumstances demanding a change on their internal circumstance. We got the Six of Pennies with the Empress. We saw the Emperor. Here's the Empress at the bottom of the deck. Oh, look at the baby dragons and birds. We got a baby dragon and two baby birds. All the babies. Six of Pentacles and the Four of Wands. Oh, snap. Well, here we can see some kind of courting ceremony. And there we can see the babies. Yeah, we know what happens in between here and there. We don't need cards to show us. If you're wondering how anatomically that works, just know that it does. I don't know how. Maybe that in and of itself is a message. Cool. So that was very fun, very roundabout, very wild kind of thing. Again, we also don't know. I don't know. There were a few things that could be. Like, was that Mazzy approaching the tower? But it feels like, because we saw the island, and the island is what the tower looks like. The island is a flooded Talaria. So the island is Talaria after the Sundering. So it feels like that was in the space of the tower before the tower became known as the tower to us. Because when the tower first appeared over here, it was just like, oh, there's this radiant, majestic, magical looking tower that is unapproachable because it's in this barrier bubble that is ruptured from time space. And then Mazzy found her way there. Maybe this is a deeper knowing. Maybe there are ancient conflicts and wars that have been waged for millennia between the forces of good and evil that Mazzy discovers as she comes upon the tower. Or it's just like, it's time to go further back. Maybe Mazzy did. It's like Mazzy's working her way down in her shadow work. So she's doing this and she's doing that and she keeps going deeper and deeper. And now she's like approaching a very big node. And this shadow node has many roots and many tendrils that grow to the surface. So from the surface, it would look like all of these like unconnected, very distant things. But as you go deeper and deeper and deeper, you see that they indeed do connect. And then you can remove it at the root. So instead of hacking away, constantly weeding and weeding and weeding in like a million different areas of your life, because things just, they grow. Like you weed it, it grows back. You weed it, it grows back. You can go to the source, pull it up by the root. Now, not only do you not have to like go to 10 million different places annually, one place, one time, you're good forever. It may require an effort that is comparable, though, to weeding and weeding and weeding. It's not necessarily any less challenging to do, but it is, in essence, from a black and white viewpoint, more effective. We have Scanos Dragonheart. Ooh, and 2 cards. Oof. Scanos Dragonheart with the Jade Orb of Dragonkind that came out with Tiamat's Fanatics. Oof, now they're stronger than Scanos, Dragonheart, and they'll survive. No, they won't. They won't survive. Thanos is still tough enough. Their toughness would be 4. Thanos has that much. It's still mutual destruction. Now, with this Jade Orb on Scanos' side, Scanos would survive, and there wouldn't be mutual destruction because Scanos, I keep saying Thanos, would have 5 toughness. Bottom of the deck is Raphael. I wonder if Raphael is the creator of this Jade Dragon Orb or linked to it somehow. I don't know. Oh, so if Raphael is associated with the Dragon Orb, that would make Raphael more dragon than infernal. Which makes sense. That explains it. That explains why Raphael isn't a bad guy. Remember how I thought that the tieflings were descended from dragons? And then I was like, oh, look at Raphael's horns. He must be a tiefling. He's infernal. And Raphael's like, I'm the actual dragon. Like, really? Really, Patrick? Sorry. Bixby says heads, Raphael isn't an infernal. Hey, Bixby. Flip a coin.
All right, here comes the flip. Looks like it came up heads.
Yep, Raphael isn't an infernal. Not all creatures or people with horns are the same or look alike. They're not all infernals. Some of them are actual dragons. Raphael is the king of wands. No, Raphael is the king of pentacles. The king of pentacles that came out with the tower that had the dragon. And when I was like, there's some kind of connection between the tower and the King of Pentacles, it was high key to me reading like the King of Pentacles was a dragon. Like the King of Pentacles is the dragon in human form or in a human guise. It was Raphael. Anyway, I kind of one day want to make a like 7-hour video, and then between like the 4th and 5.5th hour, just go like real whatever, and then bring it back. Ground it back down. I see them at the cut now. So I've shuffled this in with the cards from the last booster pack. I'm gonna give it a few. Oh, that was like 3 cards. Okay. Just to see like what comes out. Raphael is a dragon. Raphael is not a tiefling. Raphael is not infernal. Don't let the horns fool you. Do dragons have horns? Oh, we just got, I think it's a basic land. Something flipped over. Oh no, it's Far Traveler. So again, you have traveled to many places over mountains and across seas, but a new journey always calls. Maybe that speaks to the depth and the breadth of spiritual work that you've done. You've done your shadow work. You've done your light work. You've done your in-between work. You've done your internal alchemy. You've done your internal conflict resolution. So now your light and your dark, your shadow and your shine, your past self, present self, future self, higher self, lower self, all the selves in all times can work together harmoniously. And it makes you into a force to be reckoned with. That Far Traveler. Oh, look. There's a tower in the back. Yeah, I guess technically. Commander creatures you own have, at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target tapped creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So if there is a Weevil, I've mentioned this before, I think with all the exiling, it's giving me, oh, okay, nice. It's giving me Weevil from Yu-Gi-Oh! I think he battled Yugi or Joey. I think it was Yugi because Yugi went like ham and the duel was over. And Joey was like, "You stop it," in his accent or in his Joey way. But Weevil played a card that was activated by insects in the opponent's deck. And Yugi's like, "Ha, I don't have any insects in my deck." And Weevil's like, "You sure about that?" Weevil had snuck a card into Yugi's deck to activate that trap spell card, whatever. But with this, at the end of your turn, if an opponent, and I think I might have seen a card that was like that. I feel like it was a jellyfish or something. I feel like it was a water mana card. It did something negative. But if you put it on your opponent's side, the negative thing would happen to them. But it's like it wouldn't, like you're, even if you control that creature temporarily, you're not the owner of that creature. So at the end of your step, you can exile up to 1 creature and return it to its owner's control, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. A lot of those negative effects activate when the creature is actually on the battlefield. And so, but to me, that's like sometimes there are things that are put upon us. Sometimes there are things that are given to us that we don't own. See, she came out in a video recently. When the last time I used the Diceology, taking the plunge into an ice cold bath, dissolution of the self. And I was talking about the spiritual self, the spiritual sensory deprivation tank, and how in that we get to see what is us and what is not us, what is actually us and what have we been told since we were children, or who was the person that everyone made us out to be that we're not. Or maybe we find out that we are that person and that's something that we own when we come out of it. Maybe like we were in that, people always tell me that I'm like this and people always tell me that I'm like that, but I think they're projecting onto me because I'm not like that. And then you go into the spiritual sensory deprivation tank and you find out that you are like that. You just didn't want to be like that, or you didn't want yourself to be seen in that way, but that is indeed how you are. you can own it. And then either you can own it and then do something with it in a positive way, or you can just own it and do whatever. Whatever you do with it, whatever you do with it. But the tank will show you that that is you. This isn't people projecting onto you because they're this or because they're jealous or whatever. That is actually who you are. You know, sometimes people have loved ones or people that are close to them that don't tell them. And then they're like, oh my gosh, if I'm like this, why didn't anybody tell me? Because they were trying to spare your feelings, because your ego is fragile, and because the clock had their mouth sealed, because that was a truth about you that you weren't ready to face yet. But now, because you saw whatever, your journey has brought to a place where you have to face it and own up to it. Whatever you do with it is whatever you do with it, but you will know the truth. Anyway. So that's like this. It returns things that are not you to wherever it came from. Now, the bottom of the deck is the hardy outlander, which is another background. So we have the far traveler and the hardy outlander. Kind of love these two together. The hardy outlander, you're a born explorer, happiest forging your way through the untamed wilds. Perfect. If they didn't sound like they were perfect. So again, you have traveled to many places over mountains and across seas, but a new journey always calls. You're a born explorer, happiest forging your way through the untamed wilds. Did I not read that? Maybe I didn't. I think the only card I read was the King of Pentacles. So this one, whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life than that player, another target creature you control gets +X until end of turn, where X is this creature's power. So with this one, if Karlach, the Fury of Avernus, had this hardy outlander background, anyone would be able to survive an attack from Tiamat's fanatics, because it would give +5 toughness and +5 power, and they only have 4 power and I think 3 toughness. So not only would they survive an attack, they would also be able to defeat them. And then with Karlach's ability, they'd also get a second combat phase. They would attack again, still powered up. Is that every creature or one creature? Another target creature. So it's one creature, but it's every time the creature attacks. So it could happen twice in one turn. But that would give Gale the power to whatever. Now, if Gale had this, it wouldn't necessarily be as effective. But anyway, it's about the journey. I was talking to one of my friends recently, and he was talking about something, and like, I've journeyed pretty significant. I would say myself, me living my life, I have journeyed pretty significantly from where I started my journey to where I am now. And I'm not the type of person that necessarily like says everything all the time, especially if it's not asked for. You know what I mean? But I said something, and then he said something. But like y'all who watch me on here, like y'all know that I have never believed, I have personally never subscribed to the idea that you're never done healing. You're always going to be healing. Life is this endless healing journey. I've never subscribed to the idea that the journey is lonely, that you're not going to have friends, or you're going to be constantly outgrowing people. I've never subscribed to any of that because, number one, when it comes to endless healing, I don't believe it. Number two, my journey has not, like my journey buddy I started my journey with, we're still journeying together. Like, it's not my truth, and it's not one that I buy into. So I don't make it my truth, even if it isn't my truth. Again, with that far traveler, that's not my truth. That's not my belief. If it ends up on my battlefield, I give it back to whoever it came from. That can be your truth. That can be the way you see the world. That can be the way you journey your journey. It ain't mine. But he said something that was almost along the lines of like, the healing is never over or whatever. And I was just like, you know, you keep practicing until you make it a habit, and you keep habiting until it becomes your new nature. And then when you build, instead of you building in the pit, you build from a leveled off place. And that's like this energy. It's like you feel the pit, you work your way out of it, and then you build upon that towards wherever you're going. But anyway, I do recognize that not like my experience isn't universal, that there are some people who may never be done healing ever. And there are some people's who journey may be very lonely. And, you know, my truth being my truth doesn't make their lives, experiences, or truth any different. I just hope that, if they see me, if that's what resonates as their truth, then they will maintain and hold on to their truth. But again, I think sometimes we can be encouraged through proxy of proximity and unknowing. We can be encouraged to take on truths that we hear or to take on truths of others because that's maybe more resonant as truth than what we knew before. So anyway, there we go. We'd have made it through 3 hours later. Like, to have the story as the story, to have the cards as they unfolded, wild. To ground it down like it's time. Isn't that what I said? It's about that time. Because of all the clocks and stuff. Yeah, I did say that because I was like, I don't own the rights. I'm not Lizzo or Lizzo songwriter. Anyway, I kind of want to pull one card from the Dungeons and Dragons Tarot, but also I don't need to make this any longer. So I'm just going to say, I hope that you have an amazing whenever you see this. If you're not, I hope you have a much better one soon. I hope you have whatever you want to have. Whatever you want to have, I hope you have that, because that may be more productive to you than you having an amazing whatever, whenever. Not only do I hope you have what you want, I hope you get what you deserve. And I hope you are acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. Emphasis on acting, emphasis on alignment, emphasis on what you wish for your reality to be. And I hope whatever you need along your path journey, anyway, you find. And until next time, I'll see you later. I love doing this. I love doing these. I sometimes wish I didn't have to ground it. I don't have to, but to make it at least potentially semi-relevant and not just come on here and be like, ooh, look at the story that these cards are telling. It may not be nobody's story. We may just be telling a story. Maybe throughout the whatever today, we find the moral of the story. What is the moral of the story to you? But let's just tell the story that the cards are unfolding. It's some time disrupting war thing that can ripple out into whatever. Anyway, maybe that's another thing too, in and of its own right, though. Like, maybe it's possible that we do a certain amount of journeying within ourselves, within our own lives. And maybe we want to go back home or reconnect with some people that we haven't seen in a while. And maybe we discover that home was exactly as it was when we left. Or a person, a job, a place, a thing is exactly as it was before we started the journey, and maybe it doesn't align anymore. Or at least not in the same ways that it did before. You know what I mean? Whatever that means. How did I end up there? I don't know. Anyway, I don't remember. Bye.